Stephen A. Smith has never been quiet. He's loud, blunt, and unapologetic. For decades, he's built his career on holding athletes, coaches, and even entire franchises accountable in a way that makes fans either cheer or cringe. But what happened the night he went live with Shedeur Sanders shocked even the people who thought they'd seen it all. Because this wasn't just a rant. It wasn't a typical Stephen A. soundbite clipped for ESPN debate shows. This was raw, unfiltered, and public. A veteran broadcaster, face-to-face with the son of one of the most polarizing legends in football, in front of millions on Instagram Live. And the subject? Not a game, not stats, not even a single play. It was control, power, legacy. Let's rewind. Shedeur Sanders entered professional football under the kind of pressure few rookies could ever imagine. He wasn't just another quarterback. He was the son of Deion Primetime Sanders, a Hall of Famer, cultural icon, and persistent thorn in the NFL establishment side. Scouts once projected Shedeur as a potential first-rounder. His accuracy, poise under pressure, and presence made him an obvious prospect. Yet draft day came, and instead of hearing his name early, he slid into the later rounds, a humiliation that analysts like Stephen A. called nothing short of a disgrace. Stephen A. warned at the time, something else was happening here. Politics, punishment, collusion maybe. Owners didn't just pass on Shedeur's talent, they sent a message. His bloodline, his father's constant refusal to play nice with the system, had marked him before he even signed a rookie deal. And then, Shedeur lit the match. Instead of quietly working his way up the NFL ladder, he signed a multi-million-dollar contract outside the league's traditional structure. A deal that included endorsements, media projects, and revenue opportunities far bigger than his NFL slot would allow. It was unheard of for a later-round QB. It was bold, loud, and above all, independent. That's when Stephen A. went off. Live, unscripted, furious, he confronted Shedeur directly, telling him he wasn't just risking his career, he was challenging the very fabric of the NFL itself. His words cut deep. They don't want you, not because of you, but because of your father. And if you fight the machine, you better be ready for the consequences. Fans flooded the chat. Half cheered for Shedeur's defiance. Half called him reckless. But the bigger question lingered. Was this arrogance? Or was this the beginning of a revolution no one could stop? It started like any other notification. Stephen A. Smith is live. Fans tapped in, expecting a monologue, maybe some banter, the usual heat and spice from one of the most recognizable voices in sports. But within seconds, people realized this wasn't Stephen A. talking at the audience. On the other side of the split screen, Shedeur Sanders himself. The moment was surreal. The loudest voice in sports media, face to face with one of the most talked about rookies in football. Instantly, the comments section lit up like fireworks. No way this is happening. Wait, are they actually arguing right now? And argue they did. Stephen A. wasted no time setting the tone. He leaned forward, eyes locked on the camera, his voice sharp. This is a disgrace. This brother should have been a first-round pick, and the fact he wasn't, that's a crime. And now, instead of showing the league what you can do, you're running off to sign a deal outside the system? But chat exploded. Fire emojis, laughing memes, caps lock declarations. But before anyone could crown Stephen A. the winner, Shedeur responded with a calmness that shook people. He didn't yell back. He didn't flinch. He leaned in with quiet conviction. Why would I give my future to people who already showed me what I'm worth to them? They didn't believe in me. They passed on me. And now, I'm supposed to beg for a seat at their table? No, I'll build my own table. Boom. The floodgates opened. Fans watching in real time suddenly picked sides. Some blasted Shedeur as arrogant and ungrateful, typing furiously, "You'll regret this." Others crowned him a trailblazer, spamming comments like, "Talk your talk, young king," and "NFL's worst nightmare." Stephen A. didn't let go. He doubled down, reminding everyone of lessons hard-learned from decades of covering the league. Do you understand how powerful this is? They don't want you because they don't like your father. That's a fact. If you fight the machine, you better be ready for the fallout, because they will bury you. For a moment, the tension was palpable. Millions were watching, and it didn't feel like a debate anymore. It felt like a generational clash, an established voice of order and accountability warning a rookie about the dangers of rebellion, while that rookie refused to bow to fear. By the time the stream ended, the internet was in chaos. Clips re-uploaded non-stop, hashtags trending worldwide, analysts scrambling to react before their morning shows. What was supposed to be a simple IG Live had turned into a career-defining showdown, the kind that cements legacies and exposes cracks in the system. To understand why Stephen A.'s fiery confrontation cuts so deep, you have to go back to the moment that changed everything for Shedeur Sanders, draft day. On paper, there was no mystery. Shedeur was projected as a top 20 pick, maybe even late in the first round. Scouts praised his composure in the pocket, his ability to scan defenses, and his mechanics. Analysts consistently labeled him as a franchise-level quarterback, the kind of rare prospect you build around. For months, fans had him circled as one of the safest bets in the pool. But then, reality hit. Pick after pick rolled by. Teams in desperate need of a quarterback looked elsewhere. Names far less polished than Sanders were called. Projects with far worse numbers went before him. By the time the third round came and went, the disbelief became outrage. Stephen A. himself called it on live television that night. This is a disgrace, an outright crime, and he wasn't alone. Twitter lit up with confusion. Draft experts scrambled to adjust their rankings as if they'd suddenly missed something obvious. But nothing on the field justified the fall. So why did it happen? That's where the whispers started. Rumors spread quickly. Maybe it wasn't about Shedeur at all. Maybe it was about his father. Deion Sanders, prime time, has always been bigger than life. As legendary as he was on the field, Super Bowls, Hall of Fame credentials, unmatched charisma. He was just as unapologetic off it. He challenged owners, critiqued the NCAA, built media spectacles, and flipped the traditional recruiting pipeline in college football. He was, in the eyes of many executives, too loud, too powerful, and far too independent. And now here came his son, carrying that same last name. So when Shedeur's name kept sliding down the board, rumors of collusion began swirling. Reports hinted that some owners didn't want the extra baggage of Deion Sanders attached to their franchise. Others quietly admitted that franchises simply didn't like the idea of a father having influence over a young QB's career. Think about that for a moment. The same league that drafts players with DUIs, suspensions, or injury red flags suddenly found Shedeur Sanders too much of a risk. Not because of his play, not because of his behavior, but because of his bloodline. That humiliation wasn't just a fall in the draft. It was a message. Shedeur entered the league under a cloud of politics, not performance. And that's why his every move now feels like a rebellion. He isn't just fighting for himself. He's fighting against a system that decided his last name mattered more than his first impression. Draft day humiliation was bad enough, but what came next was the real spark that turned a quiet controversy into an outright firestorm. Instead of playing the role every late-round rookie usually plays, grateful, quiet, desperate for crumbs, Shedeur Sanders made a move that nobody saw coming. He signed a multi-million-dollar contract outside of the NFL system. Think about that. A fifth-round quarterback with just one preseason under his belt, locking in a deal usually reserved for seasoned superstars. And this wasn't just a basic endorsement check. Reports claimed it was stacked with media opportunities, cross-platform exposure, and equity-based incentives, the kind of deal that gave Shedeur control and profit far beyond Sunday stats. In an instant, he went from overlooked rookie to one of the most talked-about names in sports. And the NFL office? Silent. Dead silent. That silence spoke volumes. Because here's the terrifying part for them. If Shedeur succeeds under these terms, he proves the gatekeepers wrong. He shows rookies they don't need to depend on the draft or on NFL approval to build power and wealth. He essentially exposes their system as fragile. For decades, the NFL has operated on one unspoken truth. Players need the league more than the league needs players. Contracts reflected that. Endorsements reflected that. Rookie deals were short leashes, not golden opportunities. But with one signature, Shedeur flipped that dynamic on its head. And that's why Stephen A. Smith went off. Because Stephen A. has been around this league long enough to recognize what the move meant. It wasn't just bold, it was dangerous. Dangerous because if it works, it inspires change. But even more dangerous, because it paints a giant target on Shedeur's back. During that Instagram Live, Stephen A. told him exactly what owners were thinking but would never say out loud. They don't want you because they don't like your father. And if you fight the machine, you better be ready for the consequences. Fans watching knew he was right. Not about Shedeur's talent, but about the NFL's vindictiveness. After all, this is the same league that blackballed Colin Kaepernick. The same league that thrives on control, even while handing billion-dollar checks to owners. So when Shedeur flexed his independence with that contract, critics called it arrogance. Insiders called it reckless, and fans couldn't stop arguing about it in the comments. But one fact cut through all the noise. Shedeur Sanders wasn't waiting for permission anymore. He set his own terms. And that is exactly why the fire is burning hotter than ever. The contract may have lit the match, but the hate, that was brewing long before Shedeur ever signed his name on the dotted line. From the moment he stepped into the spotlight, critics armed themselves with the same recycled narratives we've seen used against outspoken athletes for decades. Only this time, the intensity was dialed all the way up. The loudest accusation? That Shedeur is nothing more than a silver spoon quarterback. The argument goes like this: he never had to grind, never had to struggle, because his father is Deion Sanders, primetime himself. They say every opportunity from Jackson State to Colorado was just doors opened by his father's legendary status. In their eyes, Shedeur didn't climb the ladder. He was lifted up by nepotism. But here's the hypocrisy. The league has always celebrated family dynasties. The Mannings, a football legacy, praised endlessly for their pedigree. The Bosa brothers, sons of NFL bloodlines, celebrated for carrying the torch. Patrick Mahomes' baseball father, hugely admired for building a foundation for his son's greatness. So why is Shedeur slammed for it, while others are celebrated? The truth is uncomfortable. It isn't about bloodlines. It's about control. Deion has never played by the NFL's unwritten rules of silence and obedience. He's loud. He's unapologetic. He's a coach who turned college football into a media circus and used charisma to keep power in his family's hands. Owners don't like that. And Shedeur, by extension, feels the weight of that resentment. Then came draft day. When Shedeur dropped from projected first-rounder to the later rounds, critics pounced. They didn't look at the politics, they didn't consider bias. Instead, they spun one story. He must not be that good. And when one preseason game went bad, 5 sacks, 3 completions, the hate machine went from simmer to full boil. See, told you so. Add in the big contract, suddenly every critic had their talking point ready. He's cashing out before proving himself. They called it arrogance. They said it was disrespecting the league. They ignored the fact that NFL teams and owners cash out on players every single day. Shedeur just happened to flip the script, and they couldn't stand to see a rookie play the same game better than them. But let's be clear, this hate isn't really about Shedeur's ability. It's about what he represents: independence, defiance, an athlete refusing to bow down. That makes him dangerous, not just to critics, but to a system built on control. And when you threaten the system, the hate comes fast, loud, and relentless. As the IG Live clips spread across every timeline and Shedeur's outside contract blew up the headlines, fans waited for the NFL to say something. A statement, a denial, even a rehearsed corporate line to cool the fire. And what did the most powerful sports league in America deliver? Nothing. No press release, no quote from a commissioner spokesperson, no official statement from any owner, just silence. Now in the NFL, silence isn't neutral, it's strategy. It's the equivalent of folding your arms and hoping the storm passes. But this time, the silence didn't read like confidence. It read like fear. Because here's the truth. Shedeur's move exposed a vulnerability the NFL has worked decades to bury. For years. Players came through their pipeline dependent on the league for approval, exposure, and financial survival. The system's power wasn't built on talent, it was built on control. And suddenly, here's a rookie quarterback who proved he could skip the line. Stephen A. hinted at it on that viral stream. If Shedeur can thrive outside league structures, the NFL's iron grit is gone. The illusion of monopoly cracks. Fans start asking dangerous questions. What if other players do the same? What if the league isn't the only path to success? Once those thoughts take root among athletes, there's no going back. You better believe NFL executives know this. You don't hand owners billion-dollar revenue checks every season because you're unshakable. You hand them those checks because your brand appears unshakable. Control is the fantasy, and Shedeur, simply by refusing to play by their book, threatens to turn fantasy into farce. That's why silence was their only move. If they lash out, they validate Stephen A.'s accusations of collusion. If they defend themselves, they acknowledge Shedeur's power. By saying nothing, they hope the chaos would fade. But instead, that very silence became its own statement. We're rattled. Because let's be honest, if this were any other rookie, late-round pick, unproven resume, small outside contract, the league wouldn't have blinked. They'd let him sign his little deal and move on. The panic isn't about one young QB cashing checks. The panic is about the precedent. A precedent where athletes aren't trapped by rookie deals. Where they don't need the draft's validation. Where young stars leverage clout and media to carve their own empire while the league watches helplessly. And that, for NFL owners watching billions flow through their franchises like clockwork, that's the biggest nightmare of all. The hate machine is loud, it's relentless, and for most young quarterbacks, it would be overwhelming. Think about it. Shedeur Sanders isn't even a full season into his professional career, and already he's been labeled arrogant, spoiled, reckless, and ungrateful. Every misstep on the field, every public comment, every contract decision gets magnified tenfold. Other rookies get patience. Shedeur gets a microscope. But here's the thing about hate. It cuts both ways. Yes, it can break a player when piled high enough, but it can also forge something stronger. Pressure doesn't only crack, it also creates diamonds. And Shedeur, he's showing signs he's starting to use the noise as something more than just walls to climb. He's using it as fuel. Let's not forget, this is a quarterback who has lived under scrutiny his entire life. From high school to Jackson State to Colorado, every snap came with double the attention most young QBs get, simply because of his last name. The cameras weren't new, the expectations weren't new, and neither was the criticism. He's been marinated in it since he first put on pads. So when Stephen A. came at him with fire, when the NFL insiders whispered he burned all his bridges, Shedeur didn't melt. He stayed calm. He reminded everyone watching, if the NFL didn't want me, why should I give them control over me? I'm not begging for their table. I'm building my own. That line wasn't arrogance. It was defiance sharpened into focus. It was a young athlete flipping the narrative meant to bury him. Critics say the hate will eventually crush him. Maybe. But history tells us another story. The most iconic athletes often grew stronger in environments where entire systems wanted them to fail. Muhammad Ali turned detractors into megaphones. Serena Williams transformed criticism into legacy. Kobe Bryant relished in silencing boos with championships. Hate didn't sink them, it fueled them. And if Shedeur can channel his version of that, if he can take every headline, every social media jab, every whispered he's not ready, and repurpose it as drive, then the same critics rooting for his collapse might regret giving him the attention that pushes him to succeed. Because hate is loud, yes, but it's also energy. Energy that can power greatness if redirected. And make no mistake, if Shedeur Sanders finds a way to flip that switch, the very people rooting for him to fall could become the unwilling witnesses to his rise. In the end, this was never just about a contract, never just about a rookie, and certainly not just about Stephen A. Smith raising his voice on Instagram Live. What unfolded wasn't a casual spat between a veteran commentator and a young quarterback. It was a mirror held up to the NFL itself, exposing the hidden fractures in the world's most powerful sports league. Control, politics, and the suffocating grip owners still try to maintain over talent. Shedeur Sanders wasn't drafted where analysts said he belonged. He wasn't embraced as the franchise savior many scouts projected him to be. Instead, from the moment he slipped on draft night, he was treated more like a threat than an opportunity, punished for having a father who never played by the rules of silence. So when Shedeur flipped the script and signed an outside, multi-million-dollar contract that bypassed the NFL's pipeline, it wasn't arrogance. It was independence. A young athlete saying out loud what so many before him were too afraid to whisper. The system doesn't get to define me. That's why Stephen A's rage felt so raw, because he knew exactly what this meant. He knew Shedeur wasn't just making a career decision, he was challenging the league's monopoly. And when you do that, the NFL doesn't clap for you, it comes for you. But maybe that's the point. Because legacies aren't built in silence. They're built in noise, in controversy, in moments where the safe option is rejected for the bold stand. Shedeur is living that right now. The hate is pouring in. The critics are waiting for him to fail. But in that hate lies his greatest chance at something bigger, proof. If he collapses, the system wins. The NFL shrugs, the owners laugh, and the machine keeps grinding rookies under its wheels. But if Shedeur succeeds, if he builds his own empire outside their control, if he proves he doesn't need the league's permission to thrive, then the victory won't just be his. It will trigger a movement where rookies leverage their clout before their first start, where athletes stop begging for a chair in the owner's room and instead construct their own table in the spotlight, where power shifts, even slightly, in the favor of those who risk their bodies every Sunday. And that's why this IG Live moment mattered. Stephen A. may have been trying to scold Shedeur, to warn him of the danger. But all he really did was confirm what many fans already suspected. The NFL is scared. And fear, when aimed at the right person, is often the first sign of change.